Ma'am, can we start the session now? Okay. Happy evening all. Wishing you all most and more. Today we are on the second day of Women's Equality Week, and today we have a panel of eminent speakers to throw their insightful views on the topic gender justice. Now, I call Sanjana of second MBA to introduce Mr. Ramakrishnan Mohan.
Good day all. I am Sanjana and I take immense pleasure in introducing Mr. Ramakrishnan Mohan. Mr. Ramakrishnan Mohan has a vast experience in the field of HR. He holds a degree in BA from PhD College of Arts and Science and was a part of the Nature NSS Nature Club. He also holds a master's in social work with specialization in HR, personal management and industrial relations from the same college. At present, he is the director of KMES. He has a volunteer experience of 3 years, and according to him, the connect with the society gives the reality picture of what has to be contributed in priority by the corporate. He is also passionate about converting the temporary migrant workforce into a skilled resource to fulfill India a hub for skills and competencies. Over to Vaishnavi.
You're on mute, ma.
Sorry. Thank you, Sanjana. Now I call Rakesh of second MBA to introduce Ms. Rajalakshmi Subramanian.
Good day, one and all present here. Myself, Rakesh, take immense pleasure in welcoming Ms. Rajalakshmi Subramaniam, HR Strategist, Director at Career 3 HR Solutions. Ms. Rajalakshmi, a seasoned HR professional with 16 plus years of rich professional experience, is doing pioneering work in the field of talent acquisition and business management. She is currently the director at Career 3 HR Solutions, a consulting firm known for spotting and providing quality talent and facilitating turnaround initiatives across India, and also the vice chairman of ISTD Chennai chapter. Her academic profile includes graduation in banking management and postgraduate in human resource management. In addition, she also plays the role of senior search professional, helping organizations to headhunt targeted professionals from targeted companies. She is an active member in many HR forums in South India and has been contributing immensely through her networking skills and knowledge sharing. She also guides young professionals who aspire to build their careers in talent acquisition and visits education institutes as a guest faculty to MBA and MHRM programs and shares her experience on the emerging trends and feature in talent acquisition. Thank you. Over to Vaishnavi.
Thank you, Rakesh. Now I call Santosh of second MBA to introduce Ms. Rajani Sriraman.
Good day to all. Myself Santosh take immense pleasure to introduce our panelist, Ms. Rajani Sriraman. Ms. Rajani Sriraman has an experience of more than 9 years in the fields of HR. She graduated with psychology from Women's Christian College, Chennai. She holds a PhD degree in psychology and HR.
Again, I have more than 25 years of experience, not 9 years.
Yeah, ma'am. So I include as more than 9 years, so it's
25 years plus years.
Yeah.
But 9 is different, 25 is different, ma.
Okay, noted.
I'm 50 plus years old. If it's 9, I should be a young.
Yeah, ma'am. You have 17 years in the industry itself.
Okay, carry on. I'll correct the data later.
She works with a compelling desire to advance diversity to make workspace sustainable. Networking is a competitive advantage. She is a curious learner with never say die attitude. She consciously participates and leads state and community-wide HR and diversity program to bring about real-time changes in the lives of people. She served as a chairperson of the Internal Complaints Committee for the Prevention of Sexual Harassment of Women. She is a passionate people leader with strong conviction to create space for everyone to feel energized, empowered, and elevate themselves. Ms. Rajani is on the board of study of top college and offer industry expertise to the various psychology and HR celebrities. She wears an entrepreneurial spirit. She is an avid reader, social media enthusiast, prolific blogger, natural network. Social networking is a special interest. We welcome you, ma'am. Over to Vaishnavi.
Thank you, Santosh. Now I call Bharat of second MBA to introduce the moderator of today's event, Ms. Raghavi Senthilkumar.
Good day to one and all present here. myself, Bharat, an immense pleasure in welcoming Mrs. K. Raghavi Sendilkumar, Director and Founder of Edway Academy and Foundation, Associate State President of Confederation of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. Mrs. Raghavi Sendilkumar is a social entrepreneur, HR consultant, trainer, mentor, educationist, public and motivational speaker, and a happy mom of 2 kids. Mrs. Raghavi Sendilkumar completed her BTech from SMK Pharma Institute of Technology. She did her MBA from Hindustan University. She did her Diploma in Training and Development from Indian Society of Training and Development and a PhD from Satyabama University. She had 13 plus years of working experience. Her career started as a HR journalist, and today she is a founder and director of Headway and associate state president of Confederation of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. While getting to know about Mrs. Raghavi Sendilkumar, I remember these words: empowered women empower other women. With this happy note, I am happy to welcome Mrs. Raghavi Sendilkumar for the panel discussion. Thank you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation, and welcome to Women Equality Week, Gender Justice. Let's celebrate the crisis. Thank you. Over to Vaishnavi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bharat. Now I call Hanmi Trisha second way to introduce our panelist, Ms. Uma Rao.
Good day all. Myself Harini Trisha takes immense pleasure to introduce our panelist Ms. Uma Rao. Ms. Uma Rao is a head HR in medium and grey commercial vehicles, CEO and director at Gulf Ashley Motors Limited. She is a HR professional with well-rounded HR experience in multi-sectors like petroleum, IT, telecom, FMGC, manufacturing, and in leading MNCs and Indian companies. She has also worked very closely with business in managing mission critical projects, assignments, and also provided a strategic perspective to business. Ms. Uma Rao is always passionate about keeping up her own curve while developing and coaching teams and extending things. Thank you, ma'am. We over to Vaishnavi.
Thank you, Hanmi Trisha. Now we hand over the stage to our moderator, Ms. Raghavi Sendilkumar. The stage is all yours, ma'am.
Welcome all guests.
Very good evening, one and all. Is my
Yes.
video and audio clear? I think that's the first question.
Hi Raghavi, before starting I would like to apologize. I got stuck in the rain while I was returning. So I will say
That's
a
okay.
big hi to all the
That's okay.
panelists. Please welcome to School of Management, PG Vaishnav College, and I extend my thanks to Raghavi for being a part of our associate and inviting you all to the event. Welcome everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam. How are you all? Hope all good.
We're doing great. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
So yes, is my video and audio clear? I think that's the first question that we all will have to check in this digital world. Since about 1.5 years, by default, that's the only question that I really get introduced with people. So on that note, I would like to thank DJ Vaishnav School of Management for giving the Headway Academy and me this opportunity. To nurture the young minds here in terms of what equality is all about, what gender sensitization is all about, and we've been having a great 5-day session, and today is day 2. I owe great happiness on this, because I prefer working with young minds like you all. On that note, it gives me immense pleasure. And today I have 2 responsibilities, not just being the part of this gender justice event as such. I'm also moderating a beautiful panel, and again, that's very close to my heart because all the people here are very close people to me, and we all commonly share something that we all are part of Indian Society for Training and Development, and of course we're all good professional friends. And on that note, panel discussion on gender justice at work. We're all set here, and as such, Mrs. Uma Rao will be joining us a little late, so we will be starting this panel discussion now. So, women, I think day one we started with all that Singapene song and all that I still remember, and celebrating women, celebrating the crisis. So that's what the students have mentioned. I think before getting onto this, I should give a big round of applause. For all the students who've been working. I think Dr. Amleshwari will also join me, second me on this. Great work by all the students out here. I think this is all driven by students here. Great work, guys. With all that celebrating the crisis, celebrating gender equality and all that. Women constitute half the population of the society today, and it is presumed that the best creations belong to the women. And I think Mr. Ram also agrees with me on this. But it is a harsh reality that women have been ill-treated in every society for ages now, and India is no exception. Yeah. From tribal to agricultural societies to organized states. I mean, the division of labor here and there has primarily, stemmed from psychological differences between the genders, yeah, leading to the power resting with men, resulting in the establishment of gender hierarchies, so-called gender hierarchies. We have been gifted with a history of discrimination, suppression, subjugation. So all these have been happening. And in India, it is believed that women enjoy an equal status as men in the Vedic period itself. And the Upanishads and the Vedas, have cited women sages and seers, but the condition declined considerably afterwards. And we all know how domestic violence, female feticide, sati, all these were, kind of imbalancing our society. So though these practices are largely defunct now, I do agree, ma'am. You don't have to tell me this because this is all, somewhere in the, rural areas and all that. But somewhere due to the, legal reform, the essence of the dysfunctional gender equality still is rampant, still is manifested today through domestic violence, trafficking, dowry deaths, what else? Female infanticide, female feticide, sexual objectification, violence, sexual harassment. Yesterday we had the Posh at work place. So yes, these are all there. So gender justice is primarily a problem of discovering the right course of action. Since ancient times, political thinkers have been trying to formulate the concept of justice. So with the rise and the growth of modern and the world consciousness, especially under this effective influence of the principles of democracy and socialism, the very concept of gender equality has been thoroughly transformed. So we are really looking forward from different perceptions from today's panelists. So on a first round, I would love to go on the introduction part of gender justice. So let me start with Rajni. Ms. Rajni, what do you think on what is all about gender justice? What is your perception on it?
Yes, I switched on my mic. Yes, Raghavi, first of all, thank you for inviting me for this conversation. I can definitely deem it a very important, role that all of us have to play while talking about gender justice. If you ask me, gender justice, there is absolutely no justice, is what I would say. While certain women are enjoying certain aspects of equality, or they are treated well by the family and society and communities, a good portion of women who actually need that justice are not receiving it. For the simple reason that they are not able to express themselves, and they are not able to get themselves on an assertive plane to talk. While all of us receive that justice, and we are sitting here and talking today only because we enjoy that justice at home and also at the workplace, people are really suffering. Certain people are really suffering, and that suffering is also not known to many of the people in the world. Okay, it is suppressed, oppression and suppression, and right now with this virtual world, the suppression and oppression has really gone up. Is what I think, Raghavi, to start with.
Yeah, good to go. So, what is your thought on this, Rajlakshmi? I would love to hear from a person who has been handling, you know, different facets of people in terms of recruitment, placing them, through different forums. So, what is that you have for us?
First of all, happy evening to all. I would like to thank DG Vaishnav, the Management Studies, and Raghavi for this wonderful opportunity. And this topic has always been very close to heart. According to me, if you look at gender justice means morely to achieve a life of dignity and a freedom as a basic human rights. Nowadays, women's participation is becoming increasingly in the education where they are completing successful their education after so many years of fight. This has been happening now in the world of job enrollment is also coming up into limelight, where we closely work with a lot of companies, as Raghavi says, starting with greenfield project, with leadership level, with management level, where there is an improvement which has happened from last 10 years back. So I feel that gender justice is coming into limelight of late. It is happening, but not to that exclusive justice being given. I would put it this way. And it also, I think we should take it in a spirit where you have more of gender justice done, where you will have women playing key roles and coming up. It has to happen, but it will happen if we go in the right direction, Raghavi, as such.
Amazing, amazing. So yes, gender justice. We've been talking for quite some time now, and of course, men play a big role in this society. Today, when I had to share these posters all across, and people were spotting me. This is an imbalance, all 3-4 women here and 1 man here, and all that. So I think with all the talks that's been prevailing, we do agree the majority of positioning of men is being higher, whether in the workplace or in the any part of career or forums or anything of that sort. I think Mr. Ram would be a representative of all the men out here, and would definitely show us a perception in terms of what gender equality is all about, and what gender equality shouldn't be also the other facet also, right? So that is very important for all of us. Over to you, Mr. Ram.
Yeah, thanks, Raghavi. Good evening to all, and thanks, DG Vaishnav, for this opportunity. And I'm an odd man out here, I know that, but let me try to do some justice here. Like Raghavi, culturally, we have a kind of a practice that we are trying to, that is, when I say it's not just men, but as a society, we are trying to protect the so-called vulnerable sector of the population, women. I mean, I'm not saying that they are vulnerable in all sense, but at least to start with, on the physical side of it, over the years, the population has been taking care of the women so that they are not hurt. They are not hurt by any kind of a predators. I mean, it could be men, it could be animals. Like, let's say, it's a very primitive age, starting from the primitive age and to the agricultural age, and thereafter to the industrial age also. What has been happening is that they have been protected. That protectionism has been seen as a kind of a subjugation. I'm also saying that, yes, there is a kind of a subjugation, suppression. All those words definitely are right in getting used here. But at the same time, the opportunity, as you rightly touched upon, right from the Puranic age, women were given adequate importance. If I may to quote Mahabharata, where the women were respected, they won. Where the women were disrespected, they lost. Simple equation. So starting from Kunti or Panchali or whoever it is, yes.
I'm just breaking you here. One moment.
Yeah. Yes.
Somebody admit Uma Rao, madam. She's waiting outside, please, guys.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Good to go.
So there has been a lot of importance given to the wisdom of women. Definitely no doubts about it. The kind of patience. In fact, Bhagavad Gita, it says 7 great qualities. If you see in a woman, you can see me there. Okay, in 10th chapter, it's very clear. So all this steadfastness, all this patience, this sweet talk, and so many lovely qualities are with women, and only they can possess that. And those who possess those qualities are very divine. So we have been respecting all those wonderful things, no doubts about it. But then when it comes to protecting, people thought that they should take the upper hand, and within quotation, this taking care has turned out to be a subjugation. If I may to just touch the corporate side, where I am exposed to about 33 years, I have seen women performing extremely well. I have worked under 3 bosses who are women, and absolutely I had no problem interacting with them, taking instructions from them, communicating with them, and the kind of relationship that we had was wonderful. Never we thought that there is a gender issue prevailing between us. And so was the case between me and my own team members. But what I'm trying to say is that the percentage of contribution of women in the corporate world is very, very minimal. Very, very minimal. Where they can perform extremely well, also, the percentage is very, very low. Today, I checked up with one of my ex-colleagues in Bosch. She says that we have made as a policy that 15% of women should be there in the leadership level and 30% at the entry level. But how much of it is possible and implementable is a matter of question, or they are trying to move towards it. What I'm saying is the probability, not only probability, the possibility of women performing extremely well at par or even better than men is always there. But the percentage is very low, and we are only moving towards a positive side. That I see now. There is a lot of possibility, starting from NASA to our own ISRO to any field that you are talking about. Initially it was only nursing and teaching, period. Today, everywhere women are there, and people are encouraging sports. They are seeing in the Olympics. So everywhere women are there performing well, and men are definitely started recognizing it. In fact, I wanted to leave a message that men are supposed to be the torch bearers for this gender justice. Yes, Raghavi.
That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you. And Ms. Uma Rao, I think you're all settled now. Can I hear a hi from you?
Hi, Raghavi, can you see me, hear me?
Oh, yes. Thank you for, having your time with us amidst your chaotic situation there. Thank you so much.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
No problem. So we're just on the round 1 as to setting up this context on gender justice. So what is your perception towards gender justice in the society by and large?
Yeah, so maybe I'm repetitive, but I'll just share my limited perspective on the topic. Like every other aspect in our society, this is not in absoluteness, nor is it in the best situation that one is. And I think that this is happening not just with regard to gender, it is many other aspects that we see this kind of an issue around justice. Now, closer to the subtopic for today, obviously, justice from whose perspective, right? Because when you look at the majority, they feel things are okay, right? So really, it's justice from whose perspective? The way I look at it is, I would look at the issue of gender more from an economic perspective, from a nation building perspective, right? I do not want to advocate having a particular gender for any role just for the sake of it. Of course, we go down to competencies, abilities, innate talents, etc. Those are common for anyone, not just for women. But I would say that the issue here is one of building the nation in the most robust way, with complete participation of every able-bodied citizen. That really is what calls for justice in terms of everything that around us when it comes to people. So I feel that the issue of gender justice shouldn't be about, taking a morcha out or, fighting in a public platform saying that women are not there in so many numbers, etc. I think the agenda is far larger. If 49% of the population is women, are they really participating in building wealth for our country and for our families and for all of us? And when I say wealth, it's not about the obnoxious wealth we're talking about. For having a decent livelihood, for having a decent means of, survival, and not having to really fight on a day-to-day basis to have even 2 square meals a day. And today, given the fact that there isn't enough representation of genders other than men in most walks of life, should we then attribute a lot of issues in the society to that? And that's a question one would like to ask. Because when you start having more participation of all people who matter in the society, perhaps our economy would have been a very different economy, right? And so, for me, the whole issue of gender is more on the economic perspective than anything else. Of course, I think you've spoken about the social aspect of it. I'm not going to deny it. But at the end of the day, when you talk of economic perspective, things get the kind of importance that they have to. And I feel this subject deserves a kind of importance because it can build this country, this nation. So that's my, limited perspective, Raghavi, on this topic at a very high level.
Absolutely, yes. This is not at all limited. I think with all the experiences of each of the panelists here, we could get a thorough, dimension and perception towards what gender justice is. I think this question is for Ms. Rajlakshmi. Are there any specific fields in which you feel that men and women are not treated equally, with so much of experience in dealing with, so many organizations, so many, people, with different hierarchies and different career levels and all that? Do you think, is there any specific field where women and men are treated equally?
Are treated equally?
Not treated equally. Not treated equally.
Okay. So she likes to believe that they're treated equally, so that's on top of her mind. Yeah, Raghavi, I think, with my experience of certain industries, with specific reference to manufacturing or ITES, IT, I think in manufacturing, women find it a very big, what do I say? It's a tough call on a daily basis for women to establish themselves because there is a shop floor, which is a male-friendly shop floor. I remember 15 years ago when I was working for TVS Logistics, and when I visited customer places like Gujarat, Halols, or Pune, where we have to go inside the shop floor and work with people, that is at our client places. I don't think I was comfortable using the restrooms. The same story, as Uma was saying, we have to repeat certain things. Starting from there to perceiving us as somebody who cannot do that hardcore shop floor jobs. A male versus female operator. So today I am also meeting a number of people who have turned their shop floors to 100% women-enabled shop floors, and they're making great progress at that, and they're very successful. But the numbers are very limited. The numbers, we can't showcase many organizations like that. So the biggest place, industry where this the equality does not happen is manufacturing, because of the work per se. Because of the attitudes of people, there is a constant fight. There's a constant fight. Yesterday I was talking to somebody who's playing a factory manager role at a very leading manufacturing industry company. She was telling me that she has invested more time weeping in the restrooms after all the insults that she's received from her male counterparts. That's why I said in the beginning, while some of us are enjoying some good things around us, there is a good group which is saying, I need more justice. They're thirsty, they're hungry for more justice, more equality. So in my perspective, with my experience in manufacturing and quasi-manufacturing organizations like logistics itself, and to some extent now into construction, I'm part of a steel construction company, which is also a quasi-manufacturing industry. This inequality exists and exists very strongly. And we are really playing a big role to get that sorted out, but it's not enough. We've just made a scratch on the surface, I would say. Even that is not very visible to me. You might be seeing my Facebook post. I'm screaming my head out, doing all kinds of things, but there's a small scratch is all that I could do personally, with a good set of council members with me.
That's amazing. So yes, taking a cue from what Ms. Rajni was saying is, there are many women who get into the bathrooms, restrooms, and vent out the pressure that's been undergone by them and all that. I think with that cue, I would like to take this question to Ms. Uma Rao. How do we actually ensure these kind of situations? And that people carry in their personal life as well as, they'll have to carry this in the professional life also. And see to it, this doesn't affect the work performance. Ultimately, from the higher level, the management level, all that we look for is productivity. So how do you think, with all the vast experience that you have, that you're working with so many, women employees, what do you think, that we could ensure that these stressful situations doesn't affect these women?
Yes, Raghavi, I wish it was true that I'm working with a lot of women employees. That would be a dream come true someday, but I hope that happens. As Rajni said, it's such a struggle to get women in the manufacturing sector. But on a lighter note, I think there's a great business model to have mobile, washrooms for women. And if somebody takes up this business idea and have it, maybe, more women might get to work. Okay. But on a more serious note, what you're saying is absolutely true, Raghavi. Years back, I heard Prahalad Kakkar, the advertising guru, and he was talking about how he manages to keep people, because, advertising is a very creative field. And it's very difficult to hold people because in those days, Alec Padamsee with Lintas and Ogilvy and Mathner, everybody was pulling all the people out. So he said one reason why he was able to hold his people, and you will be surprised to know, was because he had great washrooms in his office in Mumbai. And I was like thinking, this must be crazy. How can somebody think about a washroom at work? But when I understood and I experienced more and more of the work environments, and even as a student in school, I would refuse to go to the washroom because they were not hygienic, and it really impacted. And imagine the psyche of all the women, the girls, young girls who hold on to their bladders till the end of the day to get home to release themselves. I think it's so stressful. It actually impacts your personality. Now extrapolate that to the work situation. It's pretty much the same. Okay, in some of the most progressive organizations, you have one washroom for a woman somewhere hidden, tucked away safely in the organization for people to go. And then there are so many washrooms which are available for men because they do it as per the ratio, right? And so this is so disgusting because women can't be like men do, and they can't release themselves outside, and it obviously requires some kind of privacy. And then imagine women in manufacturing who have to walk 1.5 kilometers to go to the nearest washroom, right? My view is if you have a shop floor, there should be a washroom attached to it. You can't have it like after 3 blocks away. By the time, you are completely exhausted, and maybe you will, if you're having a running stomach, God bless you. So these are things that people have to understand, that it is not a matter of cribbing, not about not having something. It is for survival that you need to do this. You're not expected to hold yourself till the end of the day or end of the shift. And so organizations which have understood this have taken the right steps very quickly. But those which have not understood and consider this as not so important would realize that the word of the mouth goes around very quickly, and people would not recommend such a workplace to others to come, right? And whose loss is that? It's the organization's loss. And for the ones who are brave enough to come, they have to face these kind of situations. One is, you also have a supervisor who's asking, where are you going? When a man goes out, they don't ask, where are you going? But for a woman, it's always a question, where are you going? And you have to really explain everything to them. It becomes very difficult to be answerable on such things. And I think that kind of a freedom to operate becomes quite an issue. And then you could always have somebody coming and complaining to you that, this person takes so much time to go to the washroom. And you don't understand. She could be carrying, where you need to, use the washroom more frequently than other times, right? So this is a real problem. Let me tell you what happened in our Pantnagar plant, where we have a lot of women employees, young girls who join us. We actually had one of the trainees there who became pregnant. The whole system kind of collapsed around because they didn't know how to deal with her. I mean, she was almost treated like an untouchable for a long time because, she what do I give her? What work can I give her? My God, this has happened. This is really going to impact the line work. One woman getting pregnant becomes so difficult to run a line. I mean, we must be kidding, right? But that's the kind of stuff that is often seen. Now, how many brave hearts are going to be there who will say, no problem, no matter what, I'm going to be sticking my neck out and staying here? These are ways in which you will surely put them out of work. And they say, no, it's okay. The moment I get married, I say, okay, fine, husband's earning enough. I'm not going to get to work because it's too humiliating for me. Right? So how do you fulfill your purpose in life when the ecosystem doesn't support you? This is something very, very important. And I think people need to understand that there are certain natural processes women will go through. But, it's only for a short time. They're not producing babies all the time, right? Nor are they menstruating all the time. There's so many other times that they are so productive. Can't you have that tolerance to understand how to work with them and get the best out of them? This is really an important issue, Raghavi.
That's beautiful. I think this has been prevailing not just in manufacturing companies, but also everywhere. And I know women who, are, as you said, quit jobs just because, they got pregnant, or, if we can go back and say people stop students schooling or college, as in, they get the puberty age and all that. So that is also there. I think it goes way beyond all these things, the background, the culture, the tradition, all that, because India is a mixture of all such, races and cultures and all that. I think we'll have to, go back on all these areas and see what is, something that keeps bugging this, so-called injustice. So I will now take a different shade to Raji on this. What do you think on this particular aspect? Is it equality of opportunity or equality of outcome, Raji?
I would more call it as an equality of opportunity as such. If you look at it in say, because on the longer run, there are a lot of things which are happening, as Umarov said or Rajni said. There's a lot of opportunities which is coming on our way as such. I would give you examples like of earlier, we were doing a lot of work on the mass level hiring, where there are a lot of opportunities which were given for operator level women candidates to be encroached. So where we had initial phase when we recruited 1,000 women, and that was first time, there were a lot of opportunity here. But how it happened and what are the challenges they faced, when we went to visit them after the hiring process, they were coming up with different challenges, but the clients were able to address it. And we were able to come out of these challenges, and they later recruited around 5,000 people as such, 5,000 women students as such for their company. So there is a lot of opportunities which is coming as such, Raghavi. It is how they take it up and how they mold and how they move it. That makes a lot of changes here. And if
Perfect.
you look at other industrial aspects, of late, what I see here is there are a lot of opportunities which is coming up, but after a point of interview, the clients feel that it is a female candidate. She's pregnant. Can we hire them? Should we hire or should we not hire? She's married recently. So after 6 months, how it is going to be? This is all the blockages which is coming now. So it is playing both the sides of late after the pandemic.
Right. I think to all the girls here, I think this information would be a little add-on to all of you all. In fact, I had this experience when when I had my first job. And very soon, my boss gave me the opportunity of interviewing people and all that. And I think this would be a dream for all the. We have so many MBA guys here, MBA students here. Aram say you sit in your cabin, and you look for the people getting into your cabin, interviewing them. So that experience, I think you all would be dreaming. And I had one such experience where my boss had said, "See, Raghavi, this person, has just got married. So you will have to ask her, if she is going to, carry her child very soon." I was like, "What? I wasn't married then." And this question was like, very, very much, panicky for me. I didn't know how to ask. I first of all wasn't able to take it up inside. So yes. But this is there, and we all have to accept it. In terms of accept it in the sense, we'll have to, as a recruiter, we'll have to understand certain practicalities for the, organizational, point of view as to how do we manage things if at all, this lady, this woman goes on a maternity leave. So that is the criteria. So how do we take it up? Is that's very important.
So what we were started doing is we started training them as a home-based recruiter. So we can't say deny jobs for them. Whoever is coming on our way, where we found the candidates, because we do an interview with each and every candidate. So once we understand how is their skill, we train them on whatever HR mandates we have or whatever requirement have. It can be any work on training programs, recruitment. We started training them for a month or 15 days on that job, and we started placing them for our clients. So that was also coming up on our way. And pandemic has played a major insight for women, I would say, compared to men, because a lot of time now women are taken for a ride, saying that we are doing such and such work because of pandemic, so you will not be here. That is all coming up off late for us, which is quite surprising, in fact.
Yeah, I was about to say that pandemic has changed everybody's approach towards recruitment and all that. Thanks to the pandemic, I wouldn't thank COVID. I wouldn't thank the virus, but I think I would thank the transformed minds just happened because of this. So now this question is to Mr. Ram.
I want to say something.
I would turn this.
Raghavi, to just add on to what Rajalakshmi just said about the COVID. So I happened to interview one kid. She's literally a kid. She's about 33, 24 years old. Just finished her engineering and got into the steel detailing industry. And she works for a company in Bangalore. So we were trying to talk to her about hiring her. And I asked, she's a Tiruchi-based girl. Her parents are in Tiruchi. So I was asking her about, where are you now? Are you working from home from Tiruchi? Then she said, "No, madam, I'm in Bangalore." Then I said, "Oh, really? So you got back after a break?" She said, "No, right from the day pandemic started, I've stayed put in in Bangalore because I felt that if I stay here, my opportunities get brighter and wider. The market really opens up for me, and opportunities within this particular company opens up. And I'm also getting a bonus because I stayed extra without going home. So so women, to just say this, it is also in the mind of that woman what she wants to do.
Mind.
The what she wants to do, what is her goal, what is her purpose, what does she want to achieve. So these are things also that we may want to look at while we talk about gender equality.
Absolutely, yes. So the mindset of a woman is very, very important. Whether you are surrounded by men or you are surrounded by situations, or you're surrounded by really good things that come to your career. So it is all up to you. Yes. So on that note, I will take up again another different dimension on so-called full gender equality. So all that we really want and dream for. So this so-called full gender equality, Mr. Ram, what do you think are the barriers that exist to full gender equality in the workplace?
I think it is our perception or preconceived notions about whether or not women will be able to perform at par or better. It's only that. In fact, I was about to talk about it. In fact, there were partiality shown in giving a lady an opportunity. I will talk within HR to take on a kind of an IR role, industrial relations role, where she has to work with the trade union leaders, internal and external, and sometimes some belligerence will definitely be there. So will she be able to do it or not? In fact, I gave an opportunity to a girl, and she was extremely doing well, and she is now the top of the ladder in an MNC. So she handled it extremely well. Within HR, the team, I had about 45 people reporting, but she was the star performer. But the management was very doubtful about whether we can give that role to a lady. I said, we will give it a chance, because that person is one, outspoken, bold. She doesn't have any kind of a reservation in talking to people. And that the kind of nuances in talking with people, where to talk what and all those things. So she had all those abilities, and she really was doing a great job. In fact, even after I left that particular organization where there was a lot of turbulence, she handled independently. Like, I'm only again trying to say that this role equality, the gender equality is possible only when we open up to more number of women candidates into the roles. Likewise, in the marketing, we presume that the people will not be, the women will not be able to take up evening meetings with the clients, and they will not be able to go to the hotels and talk to people, come late in the evening, and there could be some disturbances at home. All these are all presumptions. We are not able to get over that. There could be issues with certain employees, women employees, but then that doesn't mean that we have to generalize the whole thing. There are people who are really doing extremely well in all these roles. So definitely this is possible, because we touched upon this washroom issue. There are companies, I'm sure Rajni and Uma will be, will be able to say yes to this, because this general equality, general neutrality washrooms have come, where these LGBTs are also accommodated, and his and her kind of indications will be there on the board, and people are free to use it. So that much of neutrality has been brought in certain organizations. But that kind of, openness in accepting people, in making it so neutral, has to come to every sector. What I am talking about is a kind of an engineering IT division. But whether this is going to come like what we have been sharing about manufacturing is, I don't know. How far it is going to happen is something that we need to wait and see. And because Uma was touching about the economy part of it, definitely I definitely would like to say something. I was in MFin, microfinance, for some time, and it was quite surprising because all along I was in manufacturing and I was in the urban sector. So this really gave a wonderful opportunity for me to understand how the rural areas, the women are handling the economy. In fact, they are handling the economy both for the family as well as the society. All the self-help groups people, they work really hard, smart, and handle the finances at home. So only thing is these people need to be exposed properly, and these kind of job opportunities or opportunities to excel has to be formatted really. That formatting is yet to happen. So when we came to know that it's about 24% unbanked yet, so when this banking has to spread all over, and when all these women are going to get opportunities to lay their hands on different opportunities, starting from tailoring or food making or jewel making or whatever it is, they are excelling well. So this formatting has to happen for women to come out into the society and prove their worth. That's what I feel.
That's absolutely social, I would say. As you said, I think many people here knows that I'm working for the empowerment of persons with disabilities, and there are many women with disabilities where when I'm touching base with the women again here on a different perspective, where the disability exists, the family doesn't accept them, and the siblings, the parents all deny the fact that the child or the girl is capable enough to do something, and brutally they affect domestic violence. All these things are prevailing amidst the disability society, and we have been working closely with many women like that, brought them out, made them understand what is the other facet of life. And today there are many women who think that talent is the only thing, the skill or the attitude or whatever you call is the only thing that drives any woman, no matter there's a disability, there's not, and all that. I think for every woman, as Mr. Ram said, there are many such women in the rural areas that working with self-help groups and all that, who have really stood high. So now I will take this question to Ms. Uma Rao. With your experience, maybe for your own career, or with somebody else career, if you have experienced, have you ever thought gender has played a role in kind of missing a promotion, missing the next level designations, or it can be hike in the salary, it can be of any of that sort. Have you experienced anything like that?
It's a difficult one to answer. I wonder which woman is going to say that, no, it's been like a cakewalk for me. So yeah, I know several women who've had it tough, and my own story would be somewhere close to that. And at a very broad level, I'll mention that initial years when you start working as a woman, people around you can be patronizing, right? And they want to be like your father or brother. I mean, it's fine as long as these are the two relationships, but they go beyond as well. And they want to be something much more to you, and they want to safeguard you and do all kinds of things. As if you can't have a working relationship without getting into the familial space, so to speak. So this is one of the issues that you have to face at the early years of your career. And perhaps for some, it is throughout their career. But then if you're bold enough to get over that and sort of move ahead, then you are not a conformist according to them. And therefore it becomes an issue to move you forward, because you're a very difficult person to handle, you see. So they're not going to look at you just the way they look at all the other men who conform to the norms, or perhaps women who succumb to the situation. So you are standing out like a sore thumb, and therefore you pay the price for it, basically. And so a couple of promotions happen because it's the generosity of people around you, not necessarily because you have the talent to get somewhere in life. And that will be impressed upon you several times. Oh, by the way, like I am the one who made it happen for you, and I rooted for your cause. And so for a long time, I used to feel I perhaps don't have any talent, if somebody else is doing all the work for me. But that's how it is. And a lot of women would perhaps echo this sentiment. And later on, what happens is you will feel stagnated. And therefore, the best way to grow for women would be to move the job. And so then what happens when you move a couple of times, some wise man who looks at your resume later says, oh my God, you've got so many job changes. So the conclusion oftentimes is you don't get along with people. And that's why you change the job. But it's not towards the organization to say that the organization has not spent enough time to nurture this individual to grow further. Right? So I think damned if you are and damned if you're not. And that's how it is. If you're ambitious, you're seen as aggressive. If you're not ambitious, then you're at the mercy of a lot of people. So just to answer that question, Raghavi, yes, it is not easy to grow in many places, but there are exemplary organizations, I can tell you, which have actually built people from the shop floor to the top floor, so to speak of, right? Somebody who may have joined as a graduate engineer trainee or an MT, and they've actually got a lot of right breaks to become role models in terms of growth. If I were to look in a close circles, there's Anjali at Cummins. She started off at the entry level, and then she's risen to, I think she's now country head India for Cummins. I think there are stories like that. But you can realize, like, it's so hard for me to remember those names and tell you. It's not like it's something which is passé so many times that it happens. And that's really the issue, right? So you need sponsors in an organization for women to grow. Those sponsors are sponsors who understand the utility and value of that woman in the organization as a contributing employee and not as a woman or anything else, right? It also requires someone to be a sponsor because you are kind of alone among many people. And you could easily be missed if you don't have a voice of your own. And it takes quite some time for women to develop a voice of their own. They don't have it from day one. Because you can imagine, just try this, Raghavi and everybody else. Have a room full of women and have a man walk in. Unless, he's really narcissist or a Casanova of sorts, he's not going to enjoy the company of so many women in a room. They feel so awkward. Am I the only man here? They ask you. I mean, like, it seems so, is what I feel like saying, because that's what it is. So it is so difficult for a man to be in a room full of women, which is so rare in any case. So how does it feel for a woman to be in a room of men? And how do you help that individual to feel comfortable and acclimatized to the place? It requires a sponsor. It requires a sensitive manager and a colleague to say, hey, listen, you haven't spoken in this meeting. Do you want to say something? Do you have a viewpoint on this? Or would you be more comfortable putting it on a post-it and sending it across? How do you make people feel comfortable? It is so easy to alienate people. The boys gang together and then the woman is standing there alone. Have you not seen this scene many times over? And how much does it take for these 10 men around to say, hey, listen, why don't you just join the group? Let's have a chat together. Okay, but it also requires women to be very assertive. Because such being the situation, are you going to succumb to this and say, oh my God, I'm a helpless damsel in distress? Or I'm going to say, listen, I will get what I want in life. It takes some time, but you can get there. And that's where women need mentors. Sponsors in the organization, mentors outside, who are going to help them through these difficult situations to say how to deal with it. I remember my own example when I was working in an organization. We got down, it was in Gurgaon. We got down to have lunch, and all the boys' club was ahead of me. I was the only one. And they jumped over one big nala, all of them, and they crossed. And there was no way in hell I could have done it, right? And so I was like feeling so miserable for a minute. These guys are not even bothered that I haven't joined them. And then I said, no, misery is not going to be the way I will lead life. And I said, listen, guys, hold on. I can't jump this. All of you wait there. I'm going to turn around from the side and come. All of you wait there till I come. And then all of them waited there. So the one thing I learned in life is you have to ask for what you want. Okay. And more often than not, you get what you want. It's sometimes, men are not bad. I mean, let me not sound as if I don't like men, or, where men are, it's a balance, right? We are looking for. And some of the men who have been in my professional life have been exemplary, absolutely exemplary. If I am what I am, it's because of a lot of these people. And what I understand is you need to ask. If you don't ask, nobody gives anything to you. Sometimes you will not get it. But what's the harm in asking? It's a 50% chance that you'll get it, right? Just as there's a 50% chance that you don't. And that's why I encourage women to speak up, stand up for themselves, speak up. It's very important, but it doesn't come very soon. It takes some time, but once they get there, they know how to assert their position. So that'll be my, bit on this, Raghavi.
So the key takeaway here is find a sponsor, find a mentor. Yes, a mentor, yes, is absolutely important at every point in life, every phase in life. We say choose a mentor also. A mentor is someone who allows you to see the hope inside yourself. So that's how I look at mentors. And it is not like I've been to all the student fraternity here. It is not like you go reach out to people. Would you become my mentors, or I would love to be your mentee? It is not that. As and when you grow in your life gives you a lot of people. I'm telling you, life will. Give you, people who will teach you, who will preach you. And, sometimes it's vice versa also, you don't know. So on that journey, there will definitely be one or many mentors. You find the appropriate people or appropriate person and see how you can take it up, on what matters you can take it up. How do you deal with certain things? How you get clarity on that and all that areas. Yes. So, with all the issues that we've been talking, as such, the problems and, all the, kind of negative part that we've been talking, I really want to take it up on a positive note here, way forward kind of a thing. I will get this question to Ms. Rajini here, because I think this question would be appropriate is what I feel. How has the, status of women changed over the year? Are they being empowered, or is it just in the debate?
If I look at it very deeply, I think we have to empower ourselves, Raghavi. Nobody is going to give you the baton and, no one's asking you to run with it. I don't think that situation is going to arise. As Uma said, yes, we have had good mentors. We've had some good coaches. At the same time, we've also had difficult times with certain men. And we've found it very difficult to, wade through the process. And I've had my own tough times with a few men. When they find you confident, they can't deal with you. And, when we confidently talk, when we confidently raise our point, they don't like you. That's period. That's it. They don't like you, and they somehow want to pull your leg down. And if this can happen to confident women, just imagine women who cannot raise their voice, women who are a bit scared to even speak in front of two people. So that, having said that, empowerment, if you want that empowerment, you need to go there and take it for yourself. Find a means to get yourself empowered. because it's not going to be presented in a what do I say? It's not going to be presented in a nicely how do I say that? It's not going to come to you easily. It's not going to be presented to you in any form that you like to receive it. Okay, and you need to work hard. At the same time, you have to prove your worth. You have to tell people that you are really worth it, that you are capable of doing things, you are competent. We need to build our skills. You can't sit in one corner, not knowing what's happening around the world. You don't want to learn, you don't want to be a continuous learner. Then nothing will happen to you. Why we're talking about gender equality, all that also we need to develop in ourselves for people to look at you in a credible way. You have to build your credibility not just by your character, but also by building your competence. If that is a must, no one likes to. So I work for an NGO where women are the students. Young students are identified from schools and they are sponsored for their college education. We take children who are from underprivileged backgrounds but with very, very good scores, scholastic aptitude. And how can they build on that going forward? You need to be smart. You need to upskill yourself. You just cannot, raise your hand and say, I need empowerment all the time. For what? Why should I give you empowerment? Do you carry that worthiness in you? This is what I would tell the young students here. I need to keep learning. I need to keep myself updated. I have to get into the knowledge building process. Show yourself as capable, then you get into an empowerment. So nothing is given to you on a platter, man. Nothing is given to you on a golden platter. No one's going to treat you unless and until you make yourself worthy of getting that. Okay, so that's the world that we belong to right now. And if you make yourself worthy, if you make yourself credible, somehow you will make it. Things will turn around and say, okay, she is good. We need to give her that space to grow. And all these people who are standing in your way will move out automatically. So this is my 2 cents to that question. I don't know whether I've answered your question properly, but this is what I feel. You have to build your credibility. You have to show the world who you are. Unless and until that's going to happen, you can never feel empowered. Can I sit in my room and say, empower me? Will you be interested, Raghavi? You will not be, right? You will ask me to get out of the room first. That's my take on that, Raghavi. Especially to the young kids. Today, I was telling somebody, I was thinking I should have done my PhD now. Everything is at the click of the button. I did it 20 years ago. It's so boring. Developed dark circles and sat at home reading all the books and taking notes down. Today, everything is presented to you. It's all there. The knowledge is there at a click of a button. So you need to use all those opportunities to build your knowledge, to build your capability, to get more credible, and then you can feel empowered. But no one's going to empower you just like that. It's not there. It's not there. Yeah. This is also an advice to the students.
Yes. So I wanted to pull that, the originality of Rajni Sriraman into this particular last round of questions. So that was the reason behind that particular question. So yes, empowerment is nothing like you somebody gives you or you take it up. It's being empowered. It's inside you. That's all. Empowerment is still inside you. And even when people talk about women empowerment, I think of late I keep telling, let us not talk about it anymore. Let us not talk about women empowerment anymore. Let us talk how to deal with empowered women. Let's go on the positive side of women empowerment as such. So now I am going to take this question. Get this question for the person who always marks her presence. Raji, how do you think women at workplace can make their mark, can mark their presence?
Raghavi, when Uma was talking and Rajni was talking, I was getting back to my career initial phase. I got into HR to understand how interviewers get rejected by a HR. That's how I got into the HR industry as such. Because I was getting into banks and I was clearing the technical interview, and my final was rejected by HR. So I wanted to know what made these HR to get in. So that's how I got into the industry as such, into consulting. And my first involvement was for a mass recruitment, where I need to see 1,000 kids per day. And my communication was only my positivity, and I didn't speak in Tamil. அங்க வந்து நான் தமிழ்ல பேச வேண்டியதா இருந்தது அந்த 1,000 kids கிட்டயும், and all were guys. And at home it's been only a journey where it is parents or it is uncle, aunts who come home and go. So even a formal handshake was little new to me at that time. So handling first go was 1,000 kids who have completed their 10th and 12th. So it was first drive was little very shivering. Even now, if I think how did I cross that and come here, it is quite surprising for me. So when we started doing that, then they started how I'm working out things at the ground. Because the ground reality is not as we sit, as Rajni said, sitting at office and saying, hi, do this, do that will not work out. You have to get into the floor and work with them and address certain issues. And it was all men's world. It was not women's world. Especially carrying a laptop is okay, but carrying recruitment drivers in your hand, going to the venue, conducting it, morning 6:30, 5:30, being in the venue, handling the students community over there was little surprising. Once this I started getting used, I started understanding, I started getting into the nuances of the process, what is right, what is wrong, how do you do it. I was given a task for doing sales 1,000 numbers. So it started coming in my way, and little surprising, then I was moved into executive search hiring. The more changing where I felt was where I accepted, they gave me marketing for Pan India. I had to do it for my consulting team, for my recruitment team, and for my IT team. And the first meeting was in Boat Club. And given the family background, it is more orthodox family, and we were all, men never smoke or drink before us. And my first meeting, we had 150 men, out of which 75% were with the glass in there. I was taken off, and when I went to the washroom, and tears were flowing from my eyes, and I said, let me tell my chairman I will resign and go. This is not my cup of coffee. Something inside me said, no, Raji, it's okay. You go meet them. This is a learning for you. That day, I could meet out of 150, I could meet 25 men who were really there to support and understand who am I, because I was a fresh face in the market for my company. And I was not hand-holded. As Uma or Rajni say, you have to open up. I didn't open up that day saying my chairman or my business head, what is this? How can I take it up? But the next day I opened up, I said, I was not able, I was shivering there and standing. I still remember 150 men, and I didn't know who was drunk, who was not. That was the situation I was in. And only one woman there, no women at all over there, and it was yellow lights. I still even remember the days now. So that inspired me to go talk to him and say, this is not the way it should have been done. A little hand-holding had to be done for me. So then my company did the hand-holding for me, which wherever meeting was taken, I was introduced to the client. This is how it happened there. Third phase which came was coming up into forums and other meetings and talking to people. So again, I had to take the next step of my career. I couldn't stop there. So everything happens when a woman accepts her challenges as an opportunity and she walks forward. I was into consulting assignments, as Uma Rao said, wherever manufacturing, because we do work a lot of consulting work for manufacturing clients. One of the clients where I went, there were no washrooms for women. we had to walk 2 to 2.5 kilometers for a washroom. So these were the areas where it was challenging, but again we had to go solve and give them solutions for it. So we have to open up, we have to understand which industry we are working for. What, as you say, you need to understand in large what is happening in your respective sectors, in your functions, what is the trends which are upcoming, the IT trends or the non-IT trends. Where our recruitment currently, you have AI playing a major role, artificial intelligence playing. So I can't tell my recruiters, you go do everything manually. I need to equip my recruiters. So according to the requirement, according to the development of the technology, we need to uplift. So these are the areas which we need to look into it. And when I started heading the company, I need to look into profitability. So each phase I need to learn how does the company does the profit, how does this calculated, what is the productivity ratio, what is the man hours, all this we have to get into details. So once we start learning, we start mastering it. That's how you start growing. So the accepting of that we do not know and we need to learn should also be with us. That will give you to reach greater goals. We have Umar Rao, Rajni, who are major examples for inspiration. Pfizer, the work Rajni has done is amazing. And Ms. Umar Rao, the work she has done in Ashok Leyland, been closely working with her for a couple of years. It gives you a little more insight how women can move up the ladder. So these are the live examples for me. And I should get inspiration from them. Whenever I speak to Uma, I get a lot of inspiration. Whenever I meet Rajni in person, she always inspires. So, I mean, these are the phases which we talk and we understand how they are. There are challenges. It is not an easy go for you. You take every challenge as an opportunity, every challenge as a learning, and do not get bogged off. There are men who are very supportive, like Ramakrishnan sir. I still remember him, how he handholded when he was a chairman in ISTD. So there are different people in your life who come as a blessing, who come as a curse to you. Even curse who come, take it as a lesson and move forward. You have a lot of advantage moving up the ladder. When you get knocked down, do not become weak. Because once you become weak or demotivated personally, you cannot get up. As a woman, I am talking, because we are not very strong. We face those challenges. So this is how I see Raghavi.
Beautiful. So on this last round, before going to Mr. Ram on the concluding part, I would get this question to Ms. Umar Rao. Quick tips and tricks, if I'll have to ask you on how do we promote gender equality at workplace. So what would you list out?
I would say the first thing is sensitize the men in the organization. And we've tried this gender sensitization sessions, all men, done by men. And, it's like those books, what they didn't teach you at Harvard, what they didn't teach you in any curriculum happens in these sessions. And you can ask a lot of questions, because many times I have seen that their intentions are quite all right. There's no problem, but they don't know how to go about certain things. So I think the first thing is, for women to thrive in a system, men have to be sensitized. That's one. Number two is, look at all the facilities that are required for women to work in a workplace, and make sure that, you make provisions for them. Not just the washrooms, etc. Your policies, your processes that you have, right? Are they supporting women to have a level playing field? If they are not, then I think you've got some work to do. That's one. Number three is, look for areas where you're not finding representation of women, and try and understand what is the reason for that. And that would be a very good insight to the organization to see how they can make it that it be in that. Otherwise, there will always be certain areas which will be left exclusively for men, unless, of course, we're okay to live with that. But if we're not, then I think we will have to understand. The fourth thing is, be intentional in creating that equality. And I'm saying many people mock reservations and all those kind of things. I don't. Because I think when the level playing field is not bad, not good, you have to do something to create that. Even in a relay race, when you see people who are at the bend are at the farthest level, and people who are in the outer ring have been given that little bit of edge to run. Why? It's an equal world. Why do you have to do that? Because the contour is not equal, and therefore you need to make situations such that it becomes equal. And I feel organizations should be very unapologetic about having policies like this, which will help. For example, in our organization, we do not give a lower rating to anybody who goes on maternity leave, right? I mean, it's you cannot. Nobody can afford to do that. Right? So you do that. We also have a 0.5% 0.5 point relaxation when it comes to promotions. Because more often than not, or many times women are seen with a very strict lens and say, oh, they're not good enough to grow, and they go back home at 5:30 and all that stuff, So those are not things that we want to neutralize, and so we give this. We intentionally put them in cross-functional teams. We get them, even if they're not at the same level as others, we get them into it because that's a great exposure of learning that women get, and it helps them to grow over there. And we also ensure that, these kind of informal sessions that we have, lunch with MD and coffee with MD or whoever, chairman, etc., we definitely have women into it. If not 50%, at least 30% of the folks, because we don't have so many, unfortunately. I'm really sorry to say that. So we have to put them in. But that's a number of people who definitely, you cannot have a group of people standing there where there are no women, or sitting there where there are no women. So we make a lot of effort to ensure that the level playing field is created. And it's still a long way to go, but I think those are ways in which we do it. We almost always never cut the budget when it comes to learning for women. Okay, we do put them through the learning programs, and there are no budgetary constraints when it comes to that. Do people feel bad? Yes, they feel bad. I mean, do we feel bad about it? No, we don't feel bad about it because we are very intentional in pushing that across, right? And at the end of the day, what am I talking? In our organization, it's like 6-7% women, right? And we want to be 35%, like many IT companies. But we're not able to get there. Because people are either forced into roles that they don't want to take up, or there are no opportunities for them to look at tailor-making a role for themselves. Just today, we had a conversation with a very bright young lady in the organization, and we told her, can you prepare your own job description? I will support you to get that role. I wish we can do this every single day for more and more women. But I think these are some ways that are helping us. And now we're working towards creating an entire manufacturing line I shouldn't be using the word man, employing women in a line completely in the manufacturing factory, so that it is an inspiration for people. And right from the supervisor to the last person, if possible, we would like to have women. So I think you have to do this and create role models. Role models make people believe that you can do it. And you need to have different role models. A woman who is married. It cannot always be a woman who is unmarried, been alone, chose never to have a family, and that's the one who's growing. No. There are women who have got a normal family, they're also growing. There are women who have unfortunate incident in their life alone, and they're also growing. Then there are women who have chosen not to marry, they're also growing. So, all kinds of women need to be seen at the top for more and more women to believe that, this journey is so possible at the end of the day. So it's about creating the ecosystem, Raghavi.
That's a role model approach of talking.
I have a question to Uma ma'am. Can I proceed?
Can we go on the last question to Mr. Ram, and then we will open up for questions.
Yeah.
On a concluding note.
Yeah, thanks, Raghavi.
Yes.
I mean, I think Uma and Rajni have adequately explained as to what should be done.
The question for you is slightly different.
Is it?
The
Okay,
question
tell
to you is
me.
slightly different. Yeah, yes, because I really wanted this last taking should be kind of synopsing all that we've been talking. So how do you expect the workforce to change over the next 5 years to encourage more women into work? So this is
Thanks to this pandemic, I think a lot of good exposure has come to women. I mean, working from home, they are doing extremely well. They are capable of handling both home affairs as well as the office affairs equally good. And what is natural for women is the sequencing of operations. When they get into the kitchen, also they do it extremely well. So the same thing that's happening at, the work-life balance is done nicely. So there is a lot of opportunities thrown open for women. And with this gig economy, you need to only take up a project, complete it, work, hand it over, done away with that. Okay, that kind of stuff is going to emerge fastly. 2025, we are not waiting now. 2022, it is going to be there for us. So, a lot of good opportunities are going to come. So, this is not with respect to only the people who are exposed to gadgets, laptops, mobiles, and all that, but also to other the people who are right inside the shop floor. But the organizations, according to me, like a kind of a consolidation, what I'm saying is that you need to have 4 things. One is the infrastructure that we have been talking, which is lacking, which need to be improved, or it must be a wonderful place where you need to really enjoy going to the job, relaxing yourself, at the same time doing your work efficiently. Performance, wonderful performance, but at the same time, you feel great about going to the job. So great place to work with. So those organizations, other companies should start emulating such kind of companies where good infrastructure is there, good policies are there, which is creating a kind of an ecosystem for the women. And it should be like a writing on the wall, like the vision and mission statement should contain this. And you have to walk the talk. That is more important, because there's no point in saying that we're going to have 30% at the entry level, 15% at leadership, and if it is not going to get filled up, there's no point. So you need to really be serious about taking genuine efforts about filling it up and bring about that kind of a parity. And then the engagement. See, there are a lot of people who get dropped out at the peak of their career for very sensitive reasons. So you need to have a clear set of people working in HR, supporting them and ensure that they don't get dropped. There are companies which are giving sabbatical. There are companies which are giving up to 6 months to 1 year of maternity leave, fully paid. But all those things are not coming to a normal or an average company of India. So any MNC can do that, afford to do that, but then not all the organizations are doing that. But then we should start emulating such organizations, and if you are able to take a few steps, the baby steps, that would definitely lead to a greater change. So what I'm thinking of, and I'm looking forward to have more women participating in the growth of India. Definitely that is happening silently, and that is also going to happen very loudly as well. Thanks. I really enjoyed the panel with Umar, Rajni, and yourself, Raghavi. Thanks a lot. Since I'm having one more session, I'm taking permission to leave now, and I will catch up with you on the concluding remarks of others. Thank you. Thanks, participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I will.
Thanks,
yes, I will go on a closing remark and hand over the screen, not the stage, the screen to Dr. Amaleshwari. Probably you can have the accumulation of every student's question. Maybe we can take one question, and probably you can take it up to the panelists. Me, Uma Madam, or Rajni Madam, or Raji Madam, we all will be there to address. So yes. On a closing note, gender justice is often used with reference to emancipator projects that advance women's right through legal change or promote women's interests in social policy, economic policy. This definition itself has been interchangeably used in terms of women empowerment, women rights, gender equality, gender equity, diversity, inclusion, so many other things. And our legislative, I mean, the legal aspect of these concepts itself have been prevailing, and we shouldn't forget it. Gender justice and constitution, from the framework of our constitution itself, we have. How many of us know this? The CB Muthama. You have this. Union of India versus Muthama case that's there. We have this Vishaka versus the Rajasthan state affair. There's so much, also on the labor law side, we have the Factories Act on the positive side. We have this State Insurance Act, Employee State Insurance Act, the Maternity, Benefit Act. We have this Equal Remuneration Act. There are also been cases where Air India versus this Misra's case was there in the Supreme Court. So I'm picking all these things that's already been there on the on the cases part, as well as there are certain laws that's prevailing, and in terms of the the laws laid that has been laid, and we will have to from our organization point of view, implement certain things. The Workmen Compensation Act, the Minimum Wages Act, the Natural what do you call that? The National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. So many laws, in favor of women. And to just quote one example, there was one case where one girl called Neera Mathur. She was working as a probationer in the LIC, and during probationary period, she applied and she was granted for the maternity leave. And by the time she came back, she was simply discharged from the service. Her discharge was defended by the LIC on the ground that she has given false declaration at the stage of entering the service. So the court held the particulars to be furnished in the declaration, and it was embarrassing if not for humiliating, at least it was embarrassing for the woman, because just for a matter of maternity leave. So and I think we all had been talking about that also. With that note, I think all of us here have gathered for on a very larger perspective, which is the gender equality, not just at the workplace. It starts from home. Inclusion starts from home. That's how I call myself. So this emphasizes that all human beings, be it women or men, we are all free to develop our own personal abilities, make choices without any limitations, set by stereotypes, so-called stereotypes, those rigid gender roles, political prejudices. So the different aspirations of people should be valued equally, and it has to be treated fairly, and according to the respective needs of each human being, it will have to be addressed. So on that note, gender justice is genuine equality among human beings, whether it is not man is superior nor woman is inferior. It is on a balancing state. So this is my conclusion remark, and over to Dr. Amaleshwari. She had a question on this.
Thank you, Raghavi, for such a best way of moderation that you have done today. So you have brought out the best through all your questions from Ranjini ma'am, Uma ma'am, and Raji ma'am. You have done a great job. Thank you. To add on to this panel, can I have this doubt? No, it's always amusing. No, girl children and their education till 10th is very good, and we can see that the number of toppers in school, 10th, 12th is also very good. Even the college, when girls enter, I just want to put a thought on inclusivity. So when I could find that when Uma ma'am or Anjali ma'am were speaking, we found that the percentage of women in the workforce itself is very less. I think ma'am said it was 7%. So now in her organization, where does this drop occur, and why does this drop occur? Because India is very divided into rural, and again you have an urban state, and everywhere there is some sort of divide in our country. So I think after the graduation, the workforce, when we talk about this particular gender entering into the workforce, I think there is a very big drop over there. Do you agree with me, Uma ma'am?
Yes, certainly. And this is one of the biggest issues we have, right, in the workforce. As the life
Inclusivity at the school is high. Inclusivity at college is also high. The number of women topping with high scores is also high. But why is the workforce not having that much equal ratio of inclusivity?
Yeah. I mean, what I'm saying is, life stages change for a woman, right? When you're a girl, it's a different life stage. When you're growing up, it's a different life stage. Then, there comes a stage where she's got a partner, a husband, or whatever, different cultures, different ways of looking at it. Now, your life, therefore, has to be within the confines of those relationships. It is not just you. And a woman is always expected to carry everybody along and move forward, right? So when it comes, for example, a choice to make between a husband leaving a job or a wife leaving a job, today it's very encouraging. Many times men also do that, and I feel so happy to see that. Not that anybody should leave the job, but what I'm saying is, making that adjustment for the family. But traditionally, it's always the women who are expected to do that. Okay? I mean, it's an unwritten expectation. And then if the woman has a husband who earns well, then the whole family in-laws also say, why do you need to work? He's earning enough. So this earning is not just to give you some good food, clothes, etc. You need to earn because you have an individuality to yourself. You can make a contribution in society and to your life. You have a purpose to live. So that recognition of women is very less. And women go on a guilt trip very fast. Very, very fast they go on a guilt trip. Oh, you're not being a good mother by your child in the creche. Oh, you're not being a good daughter-in-law because your mother-in-law is not well, but you're not attending to her. You're going to work. So the woman has to cater to everybody around. And so as the life stage of a woman increases and the responsibilities increase, the willingness to break all that and continue becomes very difficult for a woman. And that is where organizations and families play a very big role to support them and say, listen, don't worry, we'll get a nanny, or don't worry, we'll get food from outside, or we'll get a cook. Don't worry, just go and do your job because your job is very important to you. It doesn't happen like that. More people pull you and suck you into the guilt than actually make you guilt-free. And that's perhaps the reason why women drop off consistently. If you see an organization from manager onwards, it keeps dwindling. And when it reaches to senior management, you hardly have anybody.
Agreed, ma'am. So we need to have an whole perspective or a societal objective that workforce from women or from the family is also very important.
Yeah, so let me tell you one thing. The perspective is changing. Okay, this is very encouraging to know. Another thing which my organization has done, for example, we have medical insurance for in-laws also.
Oh, that's great.
So the in-laws now are very happy to have the daughter-in-law going to work because they get a huge medical benefit. So sometimes you have to beat the system in a certain way to get something out. And then they will never allow you to take leave, to go on loss of pay, etc., because they feel this is going to impact their benefits. Now, every organization may or may not afford, but if you're serious about having women, you better get those policies which are important.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Uma ma'am. Now, this is for the corporate jobs that we look into. Again, there is one more bigger area where women tend to go there is very scary, and we all know into policy, what you call the policy making or into politics, right, ma'am? And it has become very, very scary that, to be very honest, if even I'm willing to go, my family says no. you don't get identified, and getting into politics is not at all advisable for women from a family of our kind, because in my family everybody belongs to a party. They have come up to a very big level, and they say that the reality is shocking, and today the media is also very shocking about what's happening. So that 33%, you think that it's not our reach, ma'am? That 33% reservation into parliament or into legislation, that is also not in our reach. Am I right, ma'am?
Can I add a point in this? When I had received a call from one party, okay, so I received a call for the by-elections MP as well as for the MLA elections. Okay, so I wasn't prepared at all. Somehow I thought maybe God is devising something. He's laying a path. Maybe why don't it? I'm a little kind of a creative person. I take decisions quick and appropriately also. So I'm not a hasty decision maker, but still yes, I really thought of taking it a chance, adventurous chance. You know what? My father didn't sleep for 2 days, 2 nights. So when I said this, okay. But on the other hand, contradictorily, my husband was working for what is to be done. He was giving me ideas which I didn't know. I don't know the ABC of politics, okay? But instead, he was giving me certain tips and how do we go about it. I think new age politics is also coming in. It is all about, again, coming back to our concept, gender justice. What is your perception towards it is not just your perception towards how balanced we should be. It is about the family, the neighboring, people, the society. By and large, everybody, all of us make it the society. So I think it is all in the mindset, as one of the panelists said.
Thank you, everyone. So these were the add-on points that I think that we have not tapped on so much. That's why I just mentioned that thing.
So because I had an experience, I wanted to intervene on that